The following presentation
does not represent Australian opinion or intellect.
Fake news, folks. Fake news.
Are you Muslim?
He should have been slapped as a child. He's a spoiled little freak rat who's probably being treated like a prince.
I'm not a crook. I burned everything I've got.
You also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
How's this? Hang on. Then we have a church rehearsal for our wedding. Oh my god. I'm emceeing a wedding. Yeah.
Whose wedding?
It's a mate of mine. He put me on the bridal party originally.
Mm.
And then that was set to cause some kerfuffle because it meant he had to drop another family member. So he wanted to include me in the ceremony.
Yeah.
So he made me the MC of the wedding. I'm like,
are you okay with that? Would you rather be the MC or would you rather be a groomsman?
Well, I said to him, thanks a lot, man. I go, now I went from getting hammered from the start of the day
to being
completely sober till the very last minute because I've got to literally farewell you as you get in your limo. You ever MC'd anything?
No.
You've got the personality for it. I don't know. For some reason... but you know what?
MCing what?
I see you as an esteemed guest. You know, do you know what I mean? Like dignitary.
Yeah, I'll be the esteemed guest. I don't want to MC shit.
No.
No.
That's the thing. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of 2000... I think this is still your photo in my phone. It's... Do you remember that... it was some magazine you were advertising in back in like 2011.
M2?
Is that what it was?
The Gentleman's Mag.
No.
No.
It was just some fashion lifestyle mag.
Fashion journal.
Maybe. But you invited me and Tits down to the Christmas party. It was somewhere in Collingwood.
Fashion journal. Yes. That's the one. Yeah.
And I remember we were taking photos, and I'll never forget it. I literally put out my phone to take like a candid of you.
Yeah.
And you just put the hand up like you were fending off like paparazzi. I've still got that as your photo. It's been, literally 8 years.
It depends on the angle.
I don't know. We got photos that night, but I just remember that one candid. Like, I just pulled it out.
Yeah, I don't like cunts pulling out phones and without permission. It's not right.
You know what I remember from that night? I just remember two things. One, we met some woman that looked like Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
She owned the vintage boutique shop, like on Smith Street or Brunswick Street. We just lost our shit. And I remember there were there were a bunch of women that, like, approached us, and their opening line was, "How are you here? What do you do? Are you famous?
Yes.
Is that why you're here?" And I just looked at him like, "Are you fucking serious?"
There were a lot of Sheilas at that party. I remember. Yeah, it was a majority women.
Yeah, and I just remember saying to him, well, I go, I'm here because my friend's a designer. She goes, oh, so what do you actually do? I'm like, well, I'm in media. I go, he's an actor. And I pointed at Tits. And I said, no, I'm a media producer. I said, well, what have you done? I said, all right. I go, do you listen to, I think it was Illy, look, it was some Aussie hip-hop dude that was like at the top of the charts.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we love him. Like, okay. So I loaded up the YouTube clip and it said produced by and it had my name under it.
Yeah.
And like, so who are you? So I put out my business card and said, here. And just match up the names, man. And then they just went white. Like, ah! I said, yeah, no, whatever, man.
And it's funny that it takes those kind of things to get people
excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's...
Do you know what bothers me? I didn't get to get you on the podcast just as the Logies happened.
Oh, no, that would have been... Now that would have been wonderful.
I just saw that ad. Was it Gleason that won the Logie? And he
Who?
did...
Oh, him.
Gleason, the comedian.
Yeah, actually, that was the best speech.
I haven't even seen it. I just read about it.
Waleed Ali was very upset.
Why?
Because this guy, Gleason, was his name Gleason?
I think it was Gleason.
Gleason. He was upset because he was making fun of people that took the award seriously.
Yeah. That's why.
Why would you take that award seriously? I think it's pretty pathetic if you're taking, any award. I think if you take any award seriously, I think it's something a bit tragic about that, but particularly
tragic.
The Logies. It's the Logies.
I know.
It's Australian TV.
I've taken the piss out of the Logies forever. I know.
And it's not even voted for by industry people. It's by people that read TV Week. How can you take that seriously? Yes.
Wait, hang on. This is something I didn't know.
Yes, it's true.
The Logies are voted on by people at home.
Yes. It's not like, the Khan Awards that are voted by, people in the industry where you can give that a little bit more credit.
Yeah.
The Logies and I've seen it in the TV Week magazine, you get your form where you nominate, you tick.
Yeah.
Tick the boxes, your favourite actor, actress, TV show
I didn't know this.
presenter. That's what determines a win. So I think it's pretty pathetic that you take that award seriously, considering the calibre of people that vote for the TV Week readers.
So wait, hang on. So you're saying that the Logie, the voting rights of the Logie isn't based on merit or skill, it's just a popularity contest?
Well, it's based on, in a way, a merit decided by a group of people, which are TV Week readers. They're deciding the merit. So what I'm saying is, it's the people that read TV Week. How can you take this award seriously? Who's bestowing you the award? It's people that fill out a form in TV Week magazine.
I actually didn't know that's what it came down to.
Yes.
That's pretty crap.
Absolutely.
Because then it just points to the whole commercial element of it's decided by whoever buys this magazine. That's
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
theoretically.
So how can you take that seriously?
Yeah, I mean, hang on, wait. The Oscars are voted on by the Academy, basically. The
Members of the
Members of the Academy.
Yeah, who could be actors, writers, directors, producers.
people of the craft, basically.
I think that's a step up.
Is there a version of the Emmys or the Golden Globes here in Australia? I've got no idea.
There's the AFI Awards, so Australian Film Industry Awards.
Okay. Why are you laughing?
Look, the Oscars and stuff, and the Golden Globes, it's the Hollywood Foreign Press.
Yeah.
It's a step up from the Logies. But I still think it's a bit tragic to take the Oscars seriously or the Golden Globes seriously or any of these awards seriously. But I like the fact that Waleed Ali got upset.
Why? Oh, because
it gives me tremendous pleasure whenever he gets upset.
Why?
Because I don't like him.
All right, hang on. Before we fly off the handle,
Yep.
I have to introduce you. Anyone that's listened to this podcast for a third of the time, I've mentioned your name 100. I've referenced you at least once an episode, especially in the early days.
Yeah.
So if anyone is actually listening, we have our guest, Old Simo. I've known this man for, hang on, met you in 2005-ish, 6-ish.
Around that time, yeah.
Yeah, and we started hanging out more about 10 years ago, so probably 2009. I was going to say, this isn't the first time we've actually done something creative together.
True.
You know? Do you remember what the first one was? Come on, there's one other thing. I was thinking about it today.
Would have been a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. Because I met you in 2005-6, but I didn't start hanging out with you more.
Hang on. It was that movie.
Yeah, the short film.
Yeah, where I was a corpse. I was naked.
I just remember putting the call out, and I texted Andy, and I said, dude, I need a nude model. He was like, all right, I'll get back to you. And he came back to me with your name. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, he doesn't care.
No, and I don't care. This is the thing. I'm not bashful.
No, and I just remember, because I'd seen you around the traps up until that point for maybe 2-3 years. Socially, we'd catch up and I'd see you in groups. But that was the first time I actually hung out with you for an extended period.
Yeah.
And you were in the buff and I was pointing fingers.
Yes.
At people to run around. You had meat on you. You were a trooper, man. That's it. How long were you on set for? At least 5 hours.
5 hours.
Yeah, it was only a short scene, but you were just sitting there and you had all the
Covered in meat. And, I was, like I said, I had no issue with nudity.
Have you seen that film, by the way?
No. I never saw it.
Really?
No, I don't believe so.
Fuck off.
No, I'm not. It's true. No one sent me a copy. I didn't. I didn't see the film.
I'm going to see if I can dig one up.
Yeah,
because
dig one up.
I actually I saw something I'd done years ago and just sort of got all nostalgic like, oh my god, look, something from.
Well,
10
I
years
wish
ago.
I could have done that now.
The film?
Yes.
Why?
The nudity. Well, because I look so much better naked now than I did back then. See, back then I wasn't as sharp physically, so, yeah.
That was 10 years ago, man. We all looked a lot different 10 years ago.
How old are we now? Yeah.
That was literally 10 years. That was 2009.
Yeah.
Because it was a mad rush to finish the edit, and then I ended up going to Cyprus at the end of that year.
That's right.
Yeah, that was when the media company just started.
The reason why he recommended me was because he knew that I'd done nudity before.
Really?
Yeah.
What, for life art?
Well, for photographers, for artists.
Yeah.
It was always tasteful, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any of those photo?
No.
Do you have any of the paintings or drawings?
No, they weren't paintings, they were photographs.
Ah.
And some video type, artwork.
Yeah.
But
Do you have any of that?
No.
It's actually quite sad because I looked back at my I was applying for a lot of media work over the last month, and I looked back and said, shit, I actually don't have a show reel. And half my stuff has just been lost, like into nowhere.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, like, I'll be on YouTube and I'll see some artist pop up. I'm like, hey, wait a second, I did a music video for that guy. And then you click on his name, and sure enough, you go back like 5-6
Yeah.
years, and it's there. And it trips me out every single time.
You should keep it. Yeah.
I know, but I don't know. Anyway, all right, so yeah, I've quoted you like 1,000 times.
Is there a favourite one?
One of your quotes?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is one.
Which one? Can you say it?
Yeah, because I've said it before. I said,
Okay, go on.
your quote was, and this was probably, this is easy, at least 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
You said, don't have kids. That's what cunts do when they're bored.
Did I say that? Yeah. Well, may I say something I disagree with that quote.
Really?
I'm going to take that back completely.
I've stood by that quote, man.
Well,
I've etched that into history like 100 times.
Cunts shouldn't have kids if they can't afford them. If they can't provide the reasonable upbringing for them. I agree with that. Practicality. But I think I have a better quote these days.
Okay.
And I think I'm going to live with this quote till the day I die, which is, I would much rather be a father than a husband. I see no use in being a husband. There's no point. But I see a point in children. I think being a father has value, and it's something that I would like to be one day, to be honest with you. But being a husband is useless, as far as I'm concerned. And you live
just an auxiliary.
Well, yes. Well, you live with someone for 6 months. Legally, it's just about the same thing in this country.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you get the de facto rights after 6 months.
The de facto rights, correct. So I don't see the point. It doesn't enhance anything. It doesn't improve anything. It's a legality you sign up for that I personally don't believe I need or others need. Marriage is it's a decorative. I don't think that's necessary either.
I've stood by two things. I've stood by two quotes, and one was the need to find someone to spend the rest of your life with should outweigh the need to have a wedding.
Without doubt.
Yeah, that was one.
Yes, I agree with that completely. But this is what annoys me about people in our culture, not just our culture, ethnic culture, but other cultures, that the emphasis is on when you're getting married.
Yeah. It's
never about wishing or wanting you to find love. Of course, they might think that's synonymous in their heads, but the focus is always on the wedding.
Yeah.
They're obsessed with
100%.
weddings, but they're not obsessed with you finding compatibility.
Oh, no, man.
Or love even. I mean, that word isn't mentioned. And that's what I find quite interesting. That word isn't mentioned. I think it's important to have love and compatibility, and I place the importance of having children quite highly. So I take back that quote because I don't agree with it anymore. And I think when did I say that?
Oh, this would have been like 10 years ago.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking along those lines whatsoever. And I should have seen the value, but I didn't.
Yeah, but you grow. That's proof that you've grown.
Absolutely.
But you know what? I still stand by that quote.
You can stand by it,
because what you said was, don't have kids. It's what bored cunts. It's what cunts do when they get bored. And that was at the peak of our sort of ranting and coffee sort of meetups. And it was at the peak of, like, you think about it, 10 years ago, we were sort of in our mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
And that was the age when people started just getting married.
Well, I was also against.
Let me get your finger up.
I'm wagging my finger. I'm doing my Putin finger wag, Thatcher finger wag. No, I also was quite against relationships.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I also, I have to say, I'm quite ashamed of that. But again, it's about growth. It's about growing. And I was an immaturity.
Your mate Bill Maher had said marriage is basically...
Who?
Bill Maher.
Bill Maher.
Yeah.
Bill Maher. Yeah,
he had said he had said something along the lines of how Scandinavian countries are sort of stopping the trend of getting married, and people aren't getting married, but they're still having families and procreating. They're still having relationships.
It's a biological need, isn't it?
They're still having relationships. They're just not getting married because they feel marriage has now become the form of the government.
What a government intervention.
What's the word? It's when the government creates like the institute of marriage, and they like a statehood. Oh, fuck! I forgot the actual quote, but it's basically the government coming in and dictating your relationship.
Well, look, I mean, I see validity in that. We know that the church used to own marriage.
Oh, nah, that's got nothing to do with it.
No.
Church's word means shit.
Church used to own it, and they used to give it to the state. Now it's the other way around. The state owns marriage and they give it to the church to perform.
Because in order to perform a marriage, you need to abide by certain not even doctrine, just words, legal words.
Legalities. Is it legalities?
It's legalities.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. It's bureaucracy. It's literally the government creating a bureaucracy for your relationship.
Well, I think that...
And then putting a tax on it.
I agree with what Maya was saying, or what he was talking about with the Scandinavians, is that, the need for a relationship, or for human relationships, is very natural, I believe. The need to have children, particularly with women, we know it's a biological thing. Women their biology is to breed.
Right.
And men to spread seed. These are biological urges that we have.
Okay.
Weddings and marriages are complete social constructs. We know this. Well, they're not necessary.
No.
They're not. And I felt frustration over the years of particularly women who, they push for the marriage. I think a lot more than men do. And I think for women, what it's about is security. They feel that if the man commits to marriage, it shows that he's serious. It shows that he's there for the long haul.
Yeah.
Quite often, so much of what goes on with females is about security. So my philosophy has always been, if you can't be in this relationship with me, if you can't be comfortable in my words and my actions of love, compatibility, then we're probably not meant to be together if you need that piece of paper and that ceremony to feel secure.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I feel a lot of men that push for it. A lot of people are doing it, because of, cultural obligations.
Yeah.
It's ritualistic. It gives you, Woody Allen said, what are you laughing at?
I'm laughing because you've been here 4 minutes and you've made a Woody Allen reference.
Yeah, when he says, tradition is the illusion of permanence.
Yeah.
And I think that's true.
Oh, no, tradition has to change.
Well, it gives you the illusion of permanence when I don't think there is any real permanence.
Anytime someone leans on tradition as being the factor of why something has to continue, it's like, but it was tradition to sacrifice virgins to sun gods.
Yeah, once upon a time.
And that was universal. That wasn't just the Egyptians. The Aztecs did it, the Incas did it, the Greeks did it. You know what I mean?
Jews were sacrificing to temples too,
Yeah.
So,
But do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That actually shits me when people lean on tradition just based on the fact of, we have to keep doing it because we've done it for so long.
Exactly.
There are a lot of things we don't do anymore.
I think with the men that push for it, it's about ego for them quite often.
Ownership
of women or ownership of that particular woman. Ego. So it's quite often when I look at these elements of society.
Yeah.
Men and women and what they believe in and why they do what they do, quite often when I examine it, for women it comes down to security.
Yeah.
For men it comes down to ego.
Yeah.
I think we're far more egotistical as a collective.
As in men are far more egotistical.
Yes. I think we're mass egotists.
Yeah, well, look what we do. We literally fight beasts in the jungle to get new terrain so we could plant a pole with our face on it and fly a flag.
And we're colonial cunts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, literally. Actually, male ego drives that, man.
It does.
It's like John drove, John climbed to the highest peak, and then James said, fuck him. And he's going to drive to the he's going to
go higher. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's ego.
It's ego.
It's ego. So I think it's the combination of the need for security and the maniacal ego. Because it's maniacal. And it can be. And it can be quite fragile as well. So I think this is why men and women want to get married.
Oh, men's egos are fragile as shit.
And women will push for marriage in a million different ways. And who do I blame for that? For that lack of security? I blame their foolish mothers. I blame society. I blame the media. I blame pop culture.
This has gotten really dark really quick and really heavy.
We've got on to marriage, didn't we? No, because I disagreed with your quote.
I know.
My quote. It was my quote that should... Because I see the value in children, and I brought up that point about I'd rather be a father than a husband any day. Any day. To me, it's a no-brainer. What for to be a husband?
I feel bad because for 3 years I've tried to get you on this podcast. I finally have you here.
Well, yes.
And we've just gone heavy-handed straight into the hard strokes of the line. Trying to figure out why society has failed. No. All right, hang on.
Yeah.
Scale it back. Sorry about the cough as well, man.
No, that's
I've
all
been coughing for 3 weeks. All right, take it back.
It was about you brought up that quote, which
okay,
it back.
Just a quick background check because like I said, people have heard about you. People haven't seen you though.
Yeah,
off the top of your head, what's the CV like? You've done corporate, you've done entrepreneurship, you've done your op-eds. You were running oldsimo was it .com.au? I don't remember.
Minus the AU.
Was it?
Minus the
Yeah,
AU.
you run
Yep.
that for a while.
Yep.
You're still sort of involved in all that sort of shit. My favourite thing that you do now is targeting Twitter.
Oh, yes.
You do what I should be spending more time doing, and that's actually getting an opinion out and challenging people on public.
I do love myself a bit of Twitter, I have to say. And I'm very proud of the work that I've done on Twitter. Now, if I may say, I'm proud of the people that have blocked me on Twitter.
You need to have like a notorious most wanted.
Well, I've been able to a Foursquare. I can put a Foursquare together of prolific people that have blocked me.
I've only been blocked by one person.
Who?
It's I mentioned it last week's podcast. Susie Youssef. Yeah, it is her name.
Who's that?
She's a quote unquote comedian.
Is she funny?
I didn't think she was funny. I'll play you last week's podcast. I go into
Too bad Hannah Gatsby isn't on Twitter.
Hannah Gatsby.
Or is she on Twitter? I must look that up.
Do you still do your Facebook thing?
Yes, I still do the Facebook thing, and I've been doing that for years.
I know, but that was the one last things. That was probably one of the few things that was keeping me on Facey until I shut down. You're like, it wasn't even okay. So what you do is you present an argument, not even an argument.
Well, sometimes I present a topic.
It's a topic,
and I pose a question.
Yeah.
To my people. Or I might make a statement, or I might write a statement piece. It just depends on my mood, what I'm feeling.
But then, you have all the people sort of losing their shit.
It can get, I call it the Colosseum, and it can get quite,
It is a Colosseum.
It is a Colosseum. And as I say to people, don't bother stepping into it if you're not prepared to take on the gladiators and the big cats.
Yeah.
Because you're going to jump in and say something. You may be pulled up on it. You may be challenged. You may be criticised. But that's the name of the game.
You want to love the fact that people still challenge you, people still step in, like whatever question you've posed, whatever topic you've put up, they step in, and they might disagree with you every single time. And
there are some,
but they don't block you. They don't walk away. Obviously there are some that do.
There actually have been many that have blocked me.
Really?
And I took statistics on it.
Shit.
Yeah, because I could see who unfriended me.
Oh,
the software program, and it would tell me the name, the day, and even down to the time.
Okay.
So I knew which person I'd offended or I'd upset.
So did you find it was people that you'd actually had on your social feed because you knew them and eventually that pushed them over the edge? Or was it people that just caught on to what you were doing and just sort of followed?
Well, I knew them, and they were, part of this debate group or this discussion group.
Okay.
But I noticed a very, very interesting trend in the people that were unfriending me or blocking me.
Yeah.
The statistics from last year, actually 2008 and 18, 98.5, let me get this right, 98.5% were gay men.
Really?
Yep.
That's a fact.
A statistical fact. It's undisputed.
So it's not fake news. It's actually
no fake news here. It's an absolute fact that 98.5% were gay men.
Okay, for anyone listening that hasn't followed on to you, what are your typical questions or statements that you propose?
Well, I mean, we cover topical issues.
Okay.
So what's going on in the world, whatever's topical, I jump on.
Yeah, I know sometimes in our WhatsApp conversations you'll flick a question or you'll just pull up something and say, hey man, what do you think of this guy? Or
they're quite often, I run it where, we cover the politics of the world, both national and international.
Yeah.
We cover all kinds of social issues, a vast range of social issues. Also, we do movie reviews as well. We cover things that are going on in arts and entertainment as well.
Essentially, it's like what this podcast is.
Yes, it's a mix. And also I might write a statement piece about, I don't know, what we were talking about before with the marriage, about what I believe men go into it with and what I believe women go into it with.
Yeah.
So it can be that as well. I'll write a statement instead of asking a question.
Yeah.
Back to the Twitter for a second.
Who are your top your headshots on Twitter?
Well, the first person that blocked me, I'm very proud of this, was the rabid Islamist from the US. Linda Sarsour, or otherwise known as Madam Cockroach, because Sarsour means cockroach in Arabic.
Really?
So her name fits her.
Okay.
Really neat. I told her off. I called her a closet theocratic Islamist, and I told her off for calling for the genital mutilation of Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Brigitte Gabriel.
Okay.
She said they don't deserve to be women and she wished she could take their vaginas away.
Uh-huh.
Horrible. And she calls herself a feminist.
Yeah, okay. But she's promoting genital mutilation.
And she's also an Islamist. She's a Sharia advocate. She says you can't be a feminist and support the state of Israel, yet she's a Islamist and Sharia advocate. I mean, what's the state of Israel done against women? Tell me that. If anything, it's empowered them and uplifted them.
That's the thing, man. I was going to say, like, even when I'm talking to, like, Arab friends and people in the Middle East and whatever,
Yeah.
they always... It didn't matter where they were from, whether it was Syria, Lebanon, whatever. They always talked about Israel.
Yeah.
And they said it's really cool because it's like a progressive version of the Arab world where there's a lot of stuff that they relate to. Outside of religion and language, there's a lot of stuff that they relate to regarding the culture, the food, the drink, like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But in many ways, they're more progressive than... They're as progressive as they wish they could be in their own homelands.
Well, this is the thing, and not many people know about this, but, post-1948, with the War of Independence, the establishment of Israel, Israel took in over 45,000 Arab Muslim refugees from British Mandate Palestine and gave them equal rights.
Straight up,
and citizenship. And they were surveyed not too long ago, and they were asked if you could have a 15th Arab state. I mean, which other ethnic ancestor can brag about having 14 states?
Yeah.
They're the only ones in the world. So anyway, a 15th state, let's call it Palestine, for argument's sake. Would you move there? And over 90% said no. Because they knew that they would not have the freedoms and liberties in that 15th state that they do in Israel.
When was this?
The survey was done, would have been 5 or so years ago.
By who?
It was done by, who was the organisation? It certainly wasn't the UN. You'd expect the UN to be doing something like that.
No chance.
No, because they're, Yeah. I can't remember who did it, but there's been a number of, this is the thing, that people don't want to know about this. They don't want to know about the Arabs.
Yeah.
The ethnic ancestral Arabs living within the state of Israel that are happy.
Yeah.
That enjoy all these rights and freedoms that they don't have.
Yeah.
In all the other states. So, these are things that I pointed out to Madam Cockroach, amongst other things. So, she blocked me. Clementine Ford blocked me.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
For what? What was the thing that broke the camel's back? Mind you, these people, you didn't just... I know for a fact that you didn't just go up to these people and start calling them names.
I don't call people names straight off.
It was literally a back and forth, which resulted in you getting blocked.
Yeah, though Sarsur's got a temper on her.
Yeah.
So she blocked me pretty much straight away. I didn't get much of a conversation from her. She's rabid.
I think that's key to note. The fact that, it was... You propose a statement, you propose a question or make a statement, and there's a back and forth.
Well, with Ford, there was many back and forths. We got into it over transgender. We got into it. She said something ridiculous about the reason why, and she's always on about white men, this obsession with white skin, that she hates white men. She said the reason why, white men or Western men don't like Islam or the idea of Islam is because they wish they could treat women the way they think Arab men treat their women, which not all Arab men are Muslim to begin with. I mean, she doesn't know this. She's globally ignorant. I think she lives in a microcosm.
Yeah.
I told her this. She's not well travelled, not well educated. And the other thing is I've noticed this vicious misandry she has.
Yeah.
And quite often women like this, they carry this hatred of men, but it really has nothing to do with the wider society. They make it out to be like it's got something to do with the wider society, but it isn't. It's about their own neuroses and their own hang-ups. So I kind of came up with a theory, just listening to what she says, is she's always on about how the horrors of white men. Never talks about men on a global perspective, and all the things that she attributes to white men that are negative or are toxic, you'll find in men all over the world. In Asia, in Africa, in the Middle East, it's common everywhere. So I said to her, look, I think I know where your misandry comes from. It's not about the wider society, really. And the reason why you're always talking about white men and heterosexual men, she doesn't like heterosexual men much either, is because that's been your entire world. You know, that's your microcosm. That's the only type of men you've known. So what's going on with these men in your microcosm? Well, the reality, I believe, is that you're raging against these men because they haven't given you what you want, which is aesthetical and sexual validation and approval. She hasn't gotten enough of that from these men that she desires it from, so she's lashing out at them.
Yeah.
So I told her, this is the reason for your misandry.
This is what you believe, anyway.
This is what I believe,
yeah,
based on my observations and the things she says and does. I think it makes sense because of a very, very microcosmic approach to men. It's always about white men and heterosexual men, and it's about the men that she's been surrounded by in Australia.
There's over 6 billion people on the planet. They're not all white men.
No, they're not all white men, and she doesn't have global scope, so I told her that as well. So when I told her this is the reason why I think you don't like men, she blocked me. So there was that. Van Badham, there's another one. Now, I never said anything against her. She got upset because I said something about her mate Ford.
Yeah.
So then she blocked me. And then I got into another one with Michelle Laurie. You know that?
Oh, the comedian.
The one that fancies herself as a comedian. And
TV presenter.
And she appears on The Project.
Yeah.
She was trying to make equivalencies between Islam and Christianity.
Yeah.
Saying that they're just as bad as each other. And she, as a lot of people do, she was conflating the corruptions and the decisions made by the institution, that is the Catholic Church, with Christianity. And we know that if you look at a lot of the issues that people have with what they bring up, their issues with Christianity. You can talk about the Crusades, which I don't think were completely incorrect, by the way. The motivation of them was decent.
You're fucked.
Well, I mean, Jerusalem was under siege. What do you expect? There was the Inquisition. You can talk about the genocide in South America and the looting of South America. You can talk about what's gone on in Africa, where they
colonialism, just period.
Well, yes, but even in Africa, they promoted the idea that condoms increases your chance of AIDS, which they're responsible for a lot of.
That's wrong.
And also the child sex abuse. You have the celibacy policies. You have the selling of indulgences. You have the allegiances with Nazism and fascism.
Yeah,
these are all terrible things, and I agree that they're all terrible things. But you can't pin that on Christianity as a faith-based ideology. These are the decisions and the corruptions of an institution that happens to be religious, but you won't find any of those things commanded in the New Testament. Well, not in the words of Jesus.
You find these wannabe hardcore fundamentalist Christians, not even fundamentalists, just what's the word we use when they become fashionably religious, when it suits. You know what I mean? When, God forbid, something happens that brings their beliefs into disrepute or threatens their existence, like gay marriage or whatever. And they start pointing at, God said to do this and God said to do that. It's like, well, actually, you didn't. You didn't say any of that. These are all created within your institutions past the word of God.
Your denominations, your various denominations, whether you're evangelicals or Pentecostals or whatever.
There's a million clubs, man.
Yeah, there's a million clubs, and, they kind of make up their own ideas as they go along.
Yeah.
It's not gospel.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that some things are gospel as well, and some things are very clear in religious ideology. So Michelle was a typical of, these guilt-ridden, masochistic Westerners, as I call them, Oriental fetishists, we can call them as well, I love that term, was defending Islam.
Yeah.
And defending the concept of Sharia law without understanding. And as I always say to people, you want to do a comparison of religious ideologies, you must compare and contrast the
We're talking at the core fundamental ideology.
We're talking about what's written.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actual religious ideology itself. So you have to look at the holy books that are in operation. And I always correct people, always bring up Leviticus to me.
Yeah.
I tell people, that's the OT. That's the Old Testament. Christians are not bound by it. It wasn't written for Christians. It was written for the Jews.
Yeah.
It's not part of, and it's more or less redundant. The Christians go by the New Testament, and they go by the words of Jesus, which are combined in the one book.
Yeah.
So you have to compare the holy books. You also have to compare the words and the commands and the lives of prophets. So you have Jesus versus Muhammad there.
Yeah.
And then you have to compare and contrast theocratic law. And we know that Sharia law, for example, comes from a combination of the Quran and the Hadith, which the Hadiths are the words of and commands of Muhammad. we have canon law in the Christian sector, we have Sharia law in the Islamic sector. So you have to look at not only how is these laws are written, but how they're applied and enforced around the world.
Yeah.
So the severity of both, the theoretical and the practical. I presented this to Laurie. You think she listened?
Nah, man.
You think she wanted to hear that? No, she was on a specific kind of agenda. So she got me. That was a pretty heated one. So she blocked me after that. Now I have not been able to be. I've tried. Yasmin Abdelmajid.
Yeah, you are the mate.
The deranged clown. I haven't. No. I think she likes the conflict.
Yeah.
And then there's the other one, and I know you like this one, the naughty little convert. Mrs. Walid, Susan Carland.
Yeah.
We had a few epic rows because I kind of
Did she block you, though?
No, she likes it.
Yeah.
So she didn't block me. I kind of told her why I thought she converted. And, she didn't take kindly to that.
The fact that they haven't blocked you says something, though.
And then there's my mate Cher.
Yeah.
We go back and forth. I mean, she and I disagree on a number of things. She's so pro-Hillary and so anti-Trump. And I'm not pro either by any means.
Yeah.
But I think with a lot of these celebrities that get quite fanatical and get caught up, and they've got friendships with Clinton, most of them. So they become so anti-Donnie that they become so pro-Clinton. Yeah. So we've gone back and forth over Clinton, Obama, who I don't believe was a golden boy.
Obama?
No,
as a president, his statistics weren't the best.
He was articulate. Sorry, he is articulate.
He was a good politician as far as the way he presented himself.
He's a career politician like Clinton. He was
a diplomat.
He's articulate. He's well presented. He's intelligent.
Yeah.
He tried to do some good things.
Yeah.
I give him credit for trying to push the Medicare. I give him credit for, the gun control.
Yeah.
But, certainly no golden boy, particularly when it came to foreign policy.
Yeah.
Him and Clinton as Secretary of State did a lot of damage.
You love that.
So, well, that's the truth. But, so Cher and I argue a bit about, and Putin, she doesn't like Putin.
Yeah.
And that I don't think he's a good man or a moral man, but there are many things I do like about him.
Your quote is, as a statesman, he's ahead of the rest.
Well, he's a brilliant statesman.
Yeah.
He's very intelligent, very cunning. He stands up against the aggression of the US and of NATO, and NATO are aggressive.
Yeah.
My word, they are. And he's a great strategist, and he's impeccable on foreign policy. So these are the things I like about him. Of course, there are things I don't like about him. And we can talk about the killing of opposition. We can talk about the regulation of the free press.
Man? Seriously?
Yeah, I know.
Seriously.
I don't approve of that. And I'd tell him that if I saw him. But, I think that you can admire qualities about someone that isn't good or moral. You can give credit where you think credit's due.
You know what kills me, Matt? This has been on my mind a lot the last sort of couple of weeks, especially because I've been working full time, so spend more time, just looking at media and talking to people and that sort of shit. Here you're talking about having these candid, confronting, forward conversations, via Twitter, etc., with like certain either pseudo celebrities or political figures or whatever, commentators, etc. Yeah. Now, whether you agree or disagree with your opinion, whether the general public does, you can't knock it for being uneducated.
Sure.
Like you've formed your opinion or whatever it is based on facts that you've read.
Yes, historical facts. Certainly. Historical facts can't be disputed.
Or philosophy or whatever. Or
drawing a conclusion.
Yeah.
I always say, if you're going to make a statement, you've got to back it up with reasons.
Yeah. Now, what annoys me is that, you and I talk politics and religion and science and philosophy, whatever. We talk about it, but I'm in no way near anywhere as read as you are. Like, I can openly admit that. Okay? I can hold a conversation, but I can't go in a massive historical debate. Okay? What pisses me off is what percentage of the population out there do you believe shares the same insight or passion that you do regarding these topics?
I think they're out there.
They are out there.
They are out there. And I don't know what the percentage is. It's hard to put a number
without
on it.
Putting a number on it, I'm just saying, you think about the people you grew up with, think about the people you went to school with, the people you socialise with, even the people you socialise with, man. Even the people I socialise with. People that I respect, people I think are intelligent, blah, blah, blah. They wouldn't be concerned with any of this shit. And someone could be listening like, someone in a week could listen to this podcast and say, what the fuck's this guy talking about?
Yeah.
You know, who gives a shit? But they'll go nuts over the Logies.
Well, I feel sorry for them.
That's what I'm saying, though. Like, it bothers me.
Well, it bothers me too because they're more enamored by the trivial.
Not even the Logies. Like, man, I've been trying to follow the news the last couple of days.
Yeah.
I sort of fell off a bit. I was just doing my own work. And you get the Epstein thing, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I caught that, like, literally
Yeah.
minutes after it happened.
Yeah.
You know, Twitter and the news just sort of blew up, and I went, shit, Epstein. You know, I guarantee you go out in the street, man, shit, Epstein killed himself. Who's Epstein? Then you look at, like, mass media, you know, websites or papers or whatever.
Yeah.
There'll be something about Epstein. Breaking news is that thing in Sydney, that guy that stabbed someone.
The stabber.
Yeah, I didn't even read that. I didn't see that until you sent it to me.
Yeah.
And then the rest is about Miley Cyrus and Liam Hemsworth's marriage ending after 7 months.
Were they married? I didn't know.
But
yeah.
I swear to God, every other bulletin has just been about that. Like 3 feature articles on why their marriage ended and why it's a bad thing. How can someone like Epstein supposedly kill himself and it gets overshadowed by Liam Hemsworth and Miley Cyrus's marriage, man?
Well, the Epstein thing's very important, isn't it? Because of all the information
everything this man knew.
There's everything this man knew about all these, you know, very important, very wealthy, you know, figures.
Literally, the documents that were sealed regarding his entire sort of life, everything that ever happened at his parties, that literally got opened, and then less than 24 hours later, he's dead.
He's dead. And, you know, I think people, well, I was certainly interested.
I didn't see it coming.
In whether it was suicide, whether it was foul play.
Yeah.
And when I say foul play, I mean, was his suicide encouraged and enabled? Did someone hand him the rope, so to speak? Because he was on suicide watch.
Yeah, he tried killing himself like 2 weeks ago.
I don't doubt that the cunt wanted to kill himself.
No, he was facing, forget it, man.
I would too if I was in his shoes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, and then why was he taken off suicide watch in the last week? It's not impossible to throw around the idea that someone helped facilitate his death.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to make sure. It's either, you know, gross corruption or gross inadequacy of the system.
And then when you're looking at it, you think about everyone that was implicated in his papers.
Well, you know, you've got
Trump. He's just
Donnie.
Just to start, you've got the President of the United States.
And, well, I want to mention Bill and Hillary too.
Bill was in there.
Bill.
Prince Andrew, I think.
He's a naughty boy. Isn't he? He's like his aunt.
Yeah, man.
Like Margaret.
Yeah.
Both naughty. And who else, you know, was in, I mean, I haven't seen the full list.
No, alright, for context's sake, Epstein was in finance, wasn't he? He was some sort of power broker, I can't even remember.
Well, and there's also this, what they call Pedo Island.
Yeah, well, he was, okay, for people that don't know, alright, Epstein was a high man in power, like with fucking, just power, money, all that sort of shit, hobnob with celebrities and politicians and people on Wall Street and yada yada, and he basically had, Pedo Island.
But, now, what I wanted to know was, these girls, they're all girls.
Yeah.
Were they pre-pubescent or were they post-pubescent? And that was a question I asked, because I didn't know too much about Pedo Island or too much about the back, and I was told that, you know, they were all post-pubescent.
Yeah.
So in that case, we've got to call them pederasts. It's pedestry, as opposed
pedestry.
to... Yeah, so they're pedestrists, not pedophiles in that case. So that's the technical distinction that you have to make. So we have to correct people on this as well.
You're going to have people coming after you like Salman Rushdie, man, in the 90s.
Well, anyone that has a fatwa out on them is a friend of mine. So that's Salman Rushdie, that's Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Majid Nawaz. I mean, Sam Harris might... Well, I love Sam Harris.
Sam Harris?
Yeah. He probably should have a fatwa out on him now if he doesn't already, but...
Who put the fatwa on Salman Rushdie? Was it the Ayatollah?
It was the Ayatollahs, yes, because he had written that book, The Satanic Verses.
Yeah, I remember The Satanic Verse.
And I was reading it on my way to Argentina this year. I started reading the first few pages on the aeroplane. There's an aeroplane crash in the first 2 pages. The plane splits in half.
Right.
So I had to put it down because, you know, my nerves can't take that on the plane. So I put it down. But, you know, I was very excited to read this book because of, you know, what he was saying in the book about there being certain verses in the Quran that are satanic.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And of course, the Islamic world didn't like this. The Ayatollahs took great offense to this, and they put the fatwa out on him. And there've been a few assassination attempts on his life. I know that the poor Japanese publisher in Japan was killed.
Yeah, I remember that.
For publishing it.
Yeah.
And people in Britain felt, and this is how piss weak some of these British can be, is that they felt that he shouldn't have gotten the Nobel Prize for Literature because he had offended people.
So what?
Precisely, that's what my idol Christopher Hitchens said. He said, "So what?" Oh, I love him so much.
Yeah, remember I sent you
he's amazing.
A link to the 12 Commandments, I think, breaking them down?
Yes.
Yeah, I reckon his breakdown of the 12 Commandments is probably the most accurate, because it paints a picture of, you look at the 12 Commandments and everything that they stand for, and when you break them down, what they actually mean.
Yeah.
And it just, these just paint the picture of an egotistical, narcissistic, jealous, emotion-driven man, that just wants to control whoever's beneath him.
Yeah.
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 So then you see, the work of God and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I reckon that was probably the best breakdown.
Well, he pointed out the nonsense of what was going on in Pakistan when that happened. With the book, people in Pakistan were outraged and they started suicide bombing. Yet Britain was too weak to tell them to stop. Stop this nonsense, or we're not going to give you any more aid money, which is what they should have said.
Yeah.
Why should we, finance or provide aid money? We're not talking about cutting off sanctions. I don't believe sanctions are good, but you're giving them all this money and aid, yet they're telling us what we can and can't do in our own countries. We can't create satire of Mo. We can't, write books like, the satanic verses. Or we're going to suicide bomb. Or we're going to do this. Or we're going to do that.
Yeah, I think we've spoken about that at length. The fact that Muslims have no sense of humor regarding their religion at all, which is fine. Yeah, like your religion can be sacred, etc. But then you look at, in contrast, what the Jews, Christians, everyone, it takes the piss out of their own religion.
Yeah, well, look, the one group that actually doesn't mind a bit of self-comedy is the Saudi Arabs.
Yeah.
There's that ventriloquist who does the, I forget his name, but he's very funny.
It's got the Arab, the bomber doll.
Yes, yeah.
I can't remember who the
He's very funny. And I read that, the Saudi Arabs think he's a riot, which I was surprised by initially, because I didn't think they'd find that funny.
I didn't think they'd take that.
But
I didn't think they would take to that at all, man.
No, but I'm glad they find it funny, because it's good. It's good to see that some people can have a laugh over things like that. But, this is a problem, isn't it? Where not only can we not take
that, I was going to say, that article that you sent me today.
Which one?
The Nils Cosmos one.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to find the author, man. He's a lawyer. He's a Greek-Australian lawyer who apparently writes poetry in Greek.
Yeah, he's a poet. Yeah.
I've never actually, I think I've seen his name in print, but couldn't find a contact, couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
But that article in itself, I actually sent it to my mum as well. And she called me up. She said that was actually really good.
I actually thought it was a good article.
Brilliant article.
Yeah.
It really touches on what you were saying earlier when you first sat down.
What did I say?
About tradition, culture, and what were you saying? I can't remember. I'd have to scroll back, but like the essence of that article. What was it called? Hang on.
Bring it up.
Yeah. You literally sent it to me like 2 seconds ago. Hang on. Greek club mentality that is misogynistic and degrading to local women should be name and shame them.
Yeah.
What's it called? That was centered around all those social clubs, yeah?
Yeah.
The philanthropic fucking social clubs. Have you ever been part of them?
Never.
Never?
Never, no.
No, like your parents went in them or anything like that?
No, they never liked them.
My mum is part of a choir. I think it's the Florinian choir.
Yeah.
I can't remember. She started that years ago. But I don't ever remember us going to those social clubs. I think more because no one's here.
Yeah, well, see, my parents my mother was born and raised here. My dad came here when he was very young. They weren't part of that first generation.
Yeah.
And I think as they were, decently travelled, and they didn't feel an attachment to that. They thought it was too conservative, too old school.
Yeah.
So they didn't partake in those, those social events.
Yeah, see, because my parents came here when they were young as well. My dad was in his teens, my mum was in her early 20s.
Yeah.
And my mum came here in the early 70s, man. My dad came here in the late 60s, I think. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And my mum left Greece to avoid falling into that trap. Like my mom was gifted as a kid. You know, she was obviously raised in a village, but she was smart. You know, she was quick. And an uncle said, you know, you got to send her to school, you got to send her to university. And my grandfather said, no, she's going to, you know, work here in the fields and turn her into a housewife, and that's that. So my mum saw that coming and said, oh, fuck that.
Yeah,
Literally packed the shit up.
She should, yeah.
Learned English, got on the first plane and headed out here.
Well, isn't it interesting? This is the, I think the disadvantage of this old world. We romanticize the old world in many ways, and there are some great things about it.
Yeah.
But this is one of its, you know, handfuls of negatives, I think.
That article that you were going on about, it was Greek club mentality that is misogynistic and degrading the local women should be named and shamed.
Yeah.
As by Dean Kalimnil.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it's about the Greek community and its social clubs and communities, service clubs and philanthropic bullshit. Basically ties into the old world, as in the people that run the clubs are all in their 70s.
Yeah, they're old men.
Yeah, they're old now.
Greek men, yeah.
I mean, they're the same age as my mum. Yeah, they've been in late 70s, mid-70s. And they basically run these clubs to keep up, you know, the whole tradition of, you know, the whole social element of Greek culture and all that
Which is good in itself.
Which is fine.
I like that.
I've got no problem with that.
No.
But old world Greek mentality is not 21st century.
No, but they haven't evolved in the way that they treat women.
Yeah.
But this old world Greek mentality of treatment of women, let's say, you'll find that just about everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
You know, this is not an exclusive Greek problem, but it's good that this author's highlighting this problem in the Greek community.
Yeah, as a Greek.
Because as a Greek, we need to know these things, and read some of the stuff that these old men were saying and doing.
Oh, it's disgusting.
It's absolutely appalling. And it shouldn't be tolerated, and it should be called out. Absolutely.
I don't like the idea where a lot of the old farts get away with blanket statement of, oh, he's just old, that's how he is. Just ignore it. I hate that.
Yeah, I don't think... No. And it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, I remember when the same-sex marriage...
Forget it.
Anyway, I had to go around to the elders of the family and get them to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I voted accordingly to their wishes because I filled out the paperwork for them. They can't read it. And, none of them voted yes to it.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell you why, apart from the fact that they just thought it was wrong.
Yeah.
It's wrong because it's wrong. And, part of me was saying, okay, well, they're old and, what can you expect? But really, I sat down, I thought about it, and I thought, well, really, what can I expect with this one, for example? Because you have people that left rural villages, A, B, came to Australia, not completely getified themselves because they didn't, but they kind of stayed with their own in many ways.
They stayed with their own, man.
They needed the support, I get that, and they did it tough, very tough back then. They didn't have government subsidised allowances or houses. Yeah. Though they weren't completely cut off, and I want to make that point as well, that even though they didn't learn English properly, they still mingled with the world outside of their Greek bubble. They did do that. But this is my point, is how can you expect someone who's had this path to be okay with same-sex marriage when they've led such insular lives, and they haven't allowed themselves to learn English properly, yet alone develop new ideas. It's just not part of their structure. So, but with the women thing, I think it's different because you're talking about simple respect for human beings.
That's literally base camp going up.
That's what I'm saying. It's base camp. The marriage idea is radical. And we have to accept the fact that to some people of that world, it's radical. It's a very, very radical idea. And no matter how much you talk about equal legal rights for couples, they just don't get it.
Yeah.
You can't explain it to them. I've tried it and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So with that one, I can be like, oh, well, yeah, that's the old world. And I don't expect them to understand this type of legality. But with this base element, as you say, human respect and treating women like they're animals or just mere sexual objects for amusement. And what they're saying is that, they're just so inferior. Yeah. That's the core idea behind it. And this misogyny, as I said, you'll find it just about everywhere in the world.
Yeah, that's definitely not isolated.
It's
just
not
Greeks in Melbourne.
Oh, no. And he would agree with us as well, but he's pointing out what's going on in our
backyard,
backyard, in our context here. And it's funny, isn't it, with misogyny? We talk a lot about misogyny on my platforms. It's one of my favorite topics. That I categorize it in 3 brands. There's 3 brands of misogyny out there. You've got the misogyny that's perpetrated by heterosexual men, which is quite often the base of it is sexual, which is objectification, which is superiority of men over the inferiority of women. Then you have female misogyny, the misogyny that females direct at other women.
Yeah.
And that's very vicious. Women don't like other women. I think
women hate women, man.
In many of the way that they treat each other, not so collaborative. It's more competitive.
Yeah.
And vicious. Because it's not saying all women behave like that, but the way that they rip each other to pieces.
Yeah.
It's very, very specific. And it's very different from the heterosexual brand, obviously. And then you have the gay male brand of misogyny. And, they seem to get away with it, but I don't let them get away with it because their brand is similar to the female brand. But the way that they treat women, I mean, they use women as caterers to their egos, just like, heterosexual men do.
Yeah.
And the way they tear them apart based on their appearances, on their hair and their body and their makeup and
it's a superficial shit.
Their clothes. And, words like bitch and slut and hoe are, ingrained in their daily language, the way they talk about women, the way they talk at women.
Yeah.
The demigoddess diva type worship, I think, is a brand of misogyny as well, because they idealize women to be demigoddesses.
Man, you know what really bothered me? I started reading into it and then I stopped because it was fucking infuriating me.
Which
that
one?
That kid that does drag.
Desmond is amazing.
Desmond, is that his name? I got no idea. I didn't even know who he was until you sent me that article, and I just went, what? That is infuriating.
Well, this is a problem, and most of this nonsense comes out of the US and Canada.
Yeah.
Where all this stuff grows out of. He started, I believe, when he was 8, and his mother had put him at the forefront of this kind of movement, where he was watching RuPaul's Drag Race as a 2-year-old, as a 3-year-old. Well, how does a child discover that? Well, the mother had put him in front of it. So you have him going on from 8 to 10. She's pretty much used him both as a commercial commodity to create a brand, and I believe also as a weapon, both a political weapon and an instrument of revenge, and I'm going to explain that.
Instrument of revenge.
Instrument of revenge. And it ties into something similar to what I said about Clementine Ford before. But you have this child that is posed and postured very, very sexually suggestive poses, like with the dress strap off the top and posing like this, kind of like Playboy or Penthouse covers. Yeah. You remember the old covers of the 80s and 90s? That's what the best covers. The best covers, except not when it's a child. And this is being pumped out into the media for all to see. This is your child. Think about that. As a 10-year-old, he's gyrating in public, twerking, sexual maneuvers. He's at gay clubs, performing in a crop top and collecting money from patrons. He's interviewed on television, and this is what bothered me. He came out dancing about to a Cher song, I believe, and he kind of collapsed on the floor, and this they never get femininity right, this lot. This exaggerated caricature, which is this idealized pop cultural view of women that doesn't exist. And he was being interviewed, I believe he's on the spectrum of autism, based on the way that he interacts and the way he speaks, and you can see it in his eyes. But on top of that, he's dead behind the eyes. Something isn't right with this child, yet you have the audience applauding, wetting themselves. You have the hosts wetting themselves. Now, if that was a little girl...
That's what bothered me the most.
If that was a little girl. Now, you can imagine the outcry, as well there should be, if that was a little girl, because not only do you have child financial exploitation. You have child objectification
Yeah.
and sexualization.
I don't understand how you can get away.
I tell you why.
You can get away with a kid.
A boy.
It's
a boy, not a girl.
It's a boy cross-dressing and sexualizing everything. You're literally putting him up on a pedestal and doing these sexually provocative moves.
Well, you know why, don't you? We wrap it up in a rainbow flag.
Yeah.
You wrap it up in a rainbow flag, and all of a sudden it's bold.
I don't like
and it's
the fact.
fierce, and it's innovative, and it's progressive.
Man, I watched Prince as a kid, and he had some of the most sexually provocative music videos of all time.
He was an adult, yeah.
Right? But he was a man. He was a grown man.
He was a grown man.
And he literally meshed the lines and the worlds. You know what I mean? Like, he brought that whole avant-garde thing. He brought that whole just a provocative sort of sexual nature. It was unseen. Like, I mean, it wasn't unseen, but it was his time. But they've got a kid doing these sexually provocative moves, and they're paying him off.
Yeah, well, as I said,
How?
Wrap a rainbow flag around it. All of a sudden,
if it was a girl, if it was a little girl,
it wouldn't sit.
nah.
And in a way, this is worse. And I'm against the child beauty pageants, that America has run.
Oh, man.
Because that's also objectification and sexualization of girls. But that stays within the realm of the one contest. And it was they still do it today, I'm sure. But, we didn't have this mass media reach. They weren't being put into adult nightclubs, performing and collecting money. They're not set up to dance and prance about and twerk, in these very sexualized manners. So there is a bit of a difference between the two. And
well, think about it. I'm sure those beauty pageants still exist. I remember we talked about it maybe 3 years ago in the first couple of episodes we ever did.
Yeah.
I'm sure they still exist.
Yeah.
But none of those child beauty pageant winners get that mass exposure.
No, they don't.
The same way as this Desmond kid does.
No, and it's because the new media has kicked in as well.
Yeah.
But because their images aren't so widely distributed, and that's partly due to new media, and they're not placed in adult contexts, they're with each other.
They're still kids.
They're
talent
kids,
shows.
the kids with other kids with an adult audience. In this case, you've got children performing at adult drag shows. You have children performing at nightclubs, and there's nightclubs. And like I said, wrap that rainbow flag around it. All of a sudden, it becomes something else. It becomes
art. Yeah.
Expression.
Yeah.
Expression. It becomes. It's so inclusive and progressive, and it's about tolerance, and he's bold and tell me. I don't see what is so innovative about this child. To me, he is a cookie cutter. He is a drag queen template. There is nothing innovative. And someone said to me, "You're offended by this?" And I said, "Well, I think it's worse than offensive.
No, it's wrong.
It's wrong.
Exploitation of a kid.
It's just wrong. And on top of that, when I was saying it's worse than offensive, it's uninteresting.
Yeah.
I think to be uninteresting is worse than to be offensive. And I think it's uninteresting, completely uninteresting and wrong on top of it.
Didn't that guy say that on American Beauty? When, the son? You remember the movie American Beauty?
I remember the movie.
With your friend, what's his name?
Who?
Kevin Spacey.
Oh, yeah, I like Kevin Spacey. Yeah, I feel sorry for him. Anyway.
He's fucked.
Yeah, we'll get to him later. We'll finish off this topic. Yeah.
American Beauty was a great movie, like outright. But I can never remember the name of the actor who played the son.
No, I don't either.
Never.
No.
It was great. I just don't remember his name.
It was a good cast, yeah.
But I remember when he accuses the blonde of being, because she says, "At least I'm not ugly," and he says, "Yeah, you are, and you're boring."
You're boring. And I guess that is the big curse, isn't it? To be boring and or uninteresting.
Yeah.
I think it's also uninteresting, all this. And I've looked at his mother. She's another one. And quite often, I've looked across all these cases. I want to make an interesting point here before I get onto the mothers, but you have got a very high, it's these claims of transgenderism. So, my boy plays with dolls, or let's just slap a label on him, he's transgender. Isn't it wonderful? Again, it goes back to using children as political pawns and as weapons, sometimes of revenge. And I'll explain the revenge bit in a bit too, but you have alleged transgender children, drag kids, genderqueer, gender fluid, etc., etc. Note the high levels of boys that are being pushed towards this,
Yeah.
or towards the feminine, let's say, the social construct of femininity or hyper-camp femininity. Note the very low levels of female girls being pushed to the masculine, or the
none.
traditional, virtually none.
None.
So that tells us that there
Not in mass media.
No.
Hysteria levels.
That tells us that there is an issue that these people have. It's a political issue against the traditional and conventional modes of masculinity. They're threatened by it. So you have women like Desmond's mother. The father is either, in these situations, the father is either completely non-existent, or he's some, poor passive slob in the background, and the mother's kind of at the forefront and calling the shots.
Yeah.
And I have to be straight up honest, in the mass majority of cases I've seen of these children, the mothers are fat and ugly.
As in the conventional forms of...
What I consider to be ugly, and what would physically unappealing, and I think the majority of people would not consider these dames to be good looking, and all overweight. The majority of them seem to be overweight, if not obese, but majority of them, let's say, overweight. So then I thought about, why do we have this trend? And it goes back to what I was saying in relation to Ford. I think not only are these women using their children as political weapons because they've jumped on the LGBTI, propaganda or ideology when it comes to trans and gender and all this stuff. I also think that they're very unhappy on the inside, because they have not gotten the aesthetical and sexual validation and attention that they've craved from men. So this is their version of lashing out by taking that child and pushing that child away from traditional and conventional modes of masculinity to the feminine, because it's that sector that they feel has let them down, that has not given them what they want. So they hold a grudge against the male social structure, against masculinity, for not giving them what they want. So I talk a lot about this idea of how often these campaigns that these people carry, although they'll dress it up to be about the wider society, it's all about their own neuroses and their own hang-ups.
So the way you see it, it's all just a psychological thing.
Oh yeah, I mean you could say that.
Yeah, I mean
it's also political.
Political, psychological.
It's
social,
a combination of the two, and the poor children are being used
pawns,
as political pawns and weapons, as instruments of revenge against traditional modes of masculinity, and the individuals and the structures that represent that to these mothers, because it's always mothers that are pushing these boys to this area, which I find interesting. Case after case that I've examined, it's always a boy that's being pushed to modes of femininity. And then sometimes you see these mothers who say, my child is gender neutral. Boy, yet the boy is wearing pink and has pigtails. And you think to yourself, okay, well, you've still decked him out to be quite feminine.
Yeah, you've taken whatever stereotype or highly...
So he's really not gender free, because you've given him very traditional modes of femininity. And this is the thing that I talk about that a lot of people get mixed up with, either deliberately or not, is that they don't understand the difference between manhood, womanhood, masculinity and femininity. They're two very different things. When we talk about man, woman, we're talking about the natural, we're talking about the biological. That's what defines us as men and women. Three specific categories, anatomy / physicality, physiology, which is functionality, and then you have the psychology, which is i.e. the brain. Yeah. Male and female brains have similarities, but they're also different according to structure, processing, and chemistry. Yeah. And quite often people think, I feel like a woman, a man, like Sam Smith, we saw on Twitter, thinks he has a vivacious woman in
that video really killed me.
It did. That was sickening. Because how can you claim to have a woman in you? It's impossible, because you don't have the biological natural template of womanhood. What you have inside of you is your mass ego, is you have your narcissism and your self-indulgence, and you also carry that oh so very typical gay male perspective of what you think women ought to be, which I think is quite misogynistic, actually, because there's a one vision template. It's always that demigoddess, pop cultural diva. This is these platonic homosexual fantasies of the way, women should be. And it's not femininity even. It's this camp, hyper-fem, over-the-top, almost hysterical version of
It's just a
femininity.
caricature of femininity.
It's a caricature. And men never get femininity right. This is the thing, we say femininity and masculinity, that they're completely social.
Yeah.
Yet, man, woman is natural biological. But when they try to capture what they think is womanly, which is what they're really saying is femininity, they never get it right. And I had this interesting conversation on Facebook where I wrote up a statement piece, is that with the men that try to emulate women or emulate femininity, it's just all about themselves. It's all about their self-gratification. So when they emulate it, they're projecting their fantasies of what women or femininity should be, which is that over-the-top, hyper-femme, gaudy construct.
Yeah.
It's not realistic whatsoever. There is no emulation of reality there. It's just their own self-indulgent vision. And on the flip side, lesbians or, say, butch women or women that lean towards the masculine, when they emulate masculinity, my goodness, most of the time they get it right.
Yeah.
The mass majority, they get it so right. And you know why? Because women don't have that mass ego, generally, like we said before.
Yeah.
They're more empathetic by nature, and they observe us. They observe our masculinities. So when they emulate it, they're emulating a reality. They don't have an idealized vision of men or masculinity in their head.
They have idealized versions of relationships.
Yeah, idealized. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. But they emulate masculinity quite accurately from the way that their swaggers, the way that they move about, their characteristics. But they can't be men. They can never have male biology. But they do take on masculinity, the reality, and there's not just one way, one brand of masculinity. There's different ways, but for more or less, they capture most of those traditional and conventional elements. They pull it off very well because they pay attention.
Yeah,
they're not caught up in themselves and this vision of how they should be according to some idealized pop cultural caricature. So I give them credit for that. They're good at it. Women are good at it. That's why when you see a woman playing a man, not a woman pretending to be a man, but an actual man in movies, they've done it well. You look at Cate Blanchett when she played Bob Dylan in I'm Not There.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Wasn't that amazing?
Yeah.
You had Linda Hunt. Remember Linda Hunt?
The short woman.
Yeah, she played a Chinese male dwarf, and she's not Chinese either, but
when?
In a film called The Year of Living Dangerously, which was a film about the Sukarno dictatorship in Indonesia with Mel Gibson and Sigourney Weaver. She did that film, and she was fantastic.
Mel Gibson and Sigourney Weaver?
Yes, early 80s. And
Pre-Lethal Weapon.
Oh, yeah, Pre-Lethal Weapon. It was a very good film. You should see it. And then you have, on the West End in London.
You just said it. Sorry, you just said it. I'm going to cut you off. You don't watch movies. You watch films. And you know the distinction between a film and a movie.
Oh yeah, I watch both. I have my guilty, B grade pleasures.
With you,
of course.
I tend to watch films.
So that's one you should put on your list.
Yeah.
I was going to say on stage. Yeah, on stage we've had Glenda Jackson in the West End, great British actress who's played King Lear.
Yeah.
And Richard III, and you think, can a woman do this? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Because of what we just explained.
Yeah, more in tune with actual character as opposed to just the idea of
and getting caught up in themselves.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, this was really pathetic. On Twitter, again, I saw it was a New York theatre company was putting on A Streetcar Named Desire. One of my favorite plays, of course. And they had decided to cast a transgender woman or a man who identifies as a woman who thinks he's a woman. You can't identify as the other sex. You either are a man or a woman, or you're not. There's no such thing as identifying as that. Or he could be gender fluid, or anyway, it was along those lines. And I saw scenes from the play. Now, this is not Blanche Dubois as a transgender woman or as a gender fluid person. This is Blanche Dubois as a woman that happens to be played by this man.
Yeah.
So I was watching the segments and I couldn't stop, almost vomiting from rage and annoyance, because it was just that thing that we're talking about.
Camp.
Hyper-femme, camp, and you understand that Blanche as well is quite an over-the-top character. She's very fragile. She's quite femme. She is prone to histrionics.
Yeah.
But it's a very fine line, and Tennessee Williams created that fine line beautifully to the point that it was realistic.
Yeah.
And we've seen great versions of it being played on stage and on screen. But this was exactly what we were talking about. You could see the self-indulgence and narcissism of this man who just wanted to, put on what he thinks is his ideal version of femininity and womanhood. And it comes across as caricature.
Yeah.
It comes across as tragic because it's all about him. It's all about him and his vision for himself. Where's the...
That's just bad acting, man.
Well, on top of it, where's the homage to women? Where's the homage to Blanche Dubois? Where's the respect you're paying to the character?
No, it doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't exist. And you could just see, he was swaying about in the slip and, posing and posturing the way that he thinks that, women behave. It's silly.